My name is Dora, and I'm a regional coordinator for Silent No More Ministry. Tonight, I have decided to give my testimony so that people can understand the true horror of abortion. 11 years ago, at the age of 19, I made the worst decision of my life. I had an abortion that I was pressured into by my former boyfriend and 3 of his buddies. At the time, I remember being completely alone and didn't know where to turn. The father of my unborn child made an appointment at the local Planned Parenthood abortion facility, but he didn't go with me that day because he used the excuse that he had to work. At the appointment, they gave me the first set of 2 pills right then and there that would stop the baby from growing, but it doesn't yet actually abort the baby. Immediately, I regretted my decision, and in tears, I asked the nurse if I could take back what I had done. However, she encouraged me to continue with the abortion. Otherwise, my baby could have severe damages and disabilities. How ironic that now all of a sudden, she was concerned about my baby's well-being. Nevertheless, I knew that I couldn't live with myself if I had to see my baby suffer because of my decision. So I chose to continue. I went back to my boyfriend's apartment and waited for the time to take my second pill. This would be the actual dose that causes the abortion. I remember sitting on the couch around with my ex and his friends watching TV. I was in complete numbness, and the decision that I had made was going over and over in my head with a depression that was already crippling my heart. As I put the second pill in my mouth and let them dissolve, I started to immediately feel intense cramps. When the cramps became unbearable, I made my way to the bathroom and I locked the door behind me, and I experienced the most severe pain I had ever felt in my life. I sat on the toilet and I bent over in pain, full-blown contractions, which I was never warned about or informed about by these nurses. I wanted to scream, but my ex and his friends were right outside the door in the living room watching TV. I grabbed a towel to bite on in order to keep from screaming and was nearly passing out. As I got up, I saw blood everywhere. I saw parts of my baby that I will never forget and never be able to erase. I fell to my knees in pain as I was blacking out, concerned that the guys would see all the blood and the clumps. And I got on my knees and I cleaned it up. As soon as I left the bathroom, I was so faint that my ex had to help me to bed. The next 2 weeks was nothing but a blur. All I remember doing was laying in bed to sleep and to cry. I didn't eat, I didn't shower, I didn't answer phone calls. I wasn't even planning to go to my checkup at Planned Parenthood, but my ex encouraged me to go. At my follow-up appointment, that's when they told me the horrific news. They told me that the abortion wasn't successful, that parts of my baby were still inside me. I had to have an emergency D&C, and the nurse sent me immediately to go to a room where the procedure and all I could hear were women screaming from the hallways. It sounded like a torture house. I was so numb on all the drugs that they gave me that I didn't care. As I walked into the room, I saw a table full of surgical instruments, still full of blood. They had accidentally sent me in a room without cleaning it up first. As they performed the D&C, I couldn't help but think that my baby was a fighter. The guilt was crippling every fiber of my being, and I was just waiting for the second to end it and go back home to lay in bed. When I left the clinic there were protesters outside. The only sign that I was able to read was one that said, "Abortion is murder. You're going to hell." The next 6 months of my life was pure darkness, pure depression. I started drinking heavily, and I used drugs every day to escape. I would often cut myself with razors to release the pain I had inside. I was also a victim of sexual abuse for 12 years growing up, but I can tell you that I would rather have dealt with that pain if it meant that I wouldn't have to deal with the pain of that one day when I had my abortion. One night shortly after, I wrote out my suicide letter. I wrote my goodbyes to all my loved ones. But by the grace of God, as I wrote my mom my goodbye letter, I couldn't bear the thought of all the pain I'd put her through. So I ended up not going through the suicide attempt. Of course, my ex and I inevitably broke up. I spent many years living in self-destruction because of my abortion. That is, until the day I found Christ. Christ truly healed me and restored me. He forgave me, walked with me, and saved my life. Although I will have to forever live with my decision and mourn the loss of my baby, I know I am forgiven by God. If you have had an abortion, please know that God forgives you too. Jesus can heal you, restore you, and turn your ashes to beauty. I share this because abortion is so evil in its core. What it does to the innocent and what it does to women is very real. That is why I am so grateful pregnancy centers exist. They care for the women in crisis in her most desperate time. They give her hope, love, support, resources, counseling, and the confidence that she has the strength to raise her child. My greatest regret is that a pregnancy center was not there for me in my time of need, because if they were, I know I would have chosen life for my baby. Today, I am asking you to consider supporting this amazing organization if you haven't already, so that they can help women in need and end this modern-day Holocaust called abortion. Thank you so much for your prayers and for listening to my story and for offering grace to me for what I've done. I promise to spend the rest of my life defending the most innocent and defenseless among us, and I promise to be silent no more. God bless you.